The same thing happened with Shoe Fly, and there were a couple of other tunes that did have lyrics, but he kind of substituted, you know, his own instead, and it was all absolutely on the spot.
But he had an encyclopedic memory for standard lyrics. He knew every tune, and the verses to them.
I mean, every musician, we will try to convince you that playing music is natural for us, and it's easy, and we just express ourselves. But we don't. We have to think about what we're doing, and we have to work hard at it. But you can tell that he's completely naturally expressing himself. And there are very, very few musicians that can really do that.
I don't think I really realized that you know, what a major internationally renowned artist he was until after the fact. And several years later, I was in a little record shop in New Orleans, and I tripped over this, and I picked it up, and I went, oh my God, there's this little funny little obscure record shop in New Orleans, and there's a Big Miller CD here, and I know that I still feeling his loss very much, and I started sort of, you know, falling apart a bit, and the record shop fellow came up to me and said, are you okay? And I said, well, you know, trying to explain things, and he started going on and on about Big and how extraordinary he was, and so on. So I'm not sure that I really appreciated that while I knew Big. After the fact, too, somebody gave us a poster that is a jazz tree, the history of jazz, and all of these major people in the history of jazz, and Big's on that tree, and yeah, so we were so very lucky to have him.
We had gone up to have dinner in one of those chalets way up high in the, you know, where the cows have. Heidi, it was Heidi. And between some of the concerts that we were doing there, and we went to this quite large restaurant. The whole band was there, everybody was there. And we walked in and sat down, and there was a band playing over in the corner of this restaurant, and it was really bad. It was one of those ancient Farfisi organs. I don't know if you've ever, does anybody know what a Farfisi organ sounds like? It's just the worst. And this guy was playing that, and then there was a C melody saxophone player, and I think a guitar player, if I remember. And the maitre d' knew that Big was there and that he must be something, so they introduced him and asked him if he'd please come and sing. So Big came and talked to these guys. I mean, we're thinking this is going to be complete murder, and they were looking around for something that they all knew that they could sing. They finally settled on Danny Boy, because these guys knew Danny Boy, and Big knew Danny Boy. Well, and he started to sing, and the place went pin drop quiet. And at the end of his singing that, everybody in the room, including all of us in the band, were in complete tears. He completely devastated that room. With half the people didn't speak English, didn't make any difference because of the emotion in his voice. I mean, he completely nailed it. And well, I'm glad it's in there, because we'll never forget that. Nobody who was there could ever forget that. We were in Germany, I think it was, and we were staying in a hotel, and none of us, it was one of those hotels where you go and everybody has breakfast in the same room kind of thing. And none of us could speak any German, and the menu wasn't in English. We didn't stay in really expensive hotels in those days. So Big said, leave it to me. I will interpret. So he set out to be our interpreter. And he made sounds like a chicken and sounds like a pig, and he was trying to explain that he wanted, you know, bacon and eggs or something like that. And the woman ran screaming from the room. She had no idea what was going on. So finally the manager came and straightened things out.
Those are the kinds of experiences that I think that today younger musicians don't get to have, is the experience of working with someone like Big or someone like Tommy. Like,
for 10 days at Lake.
Yeah, it was like, oh yeah, it's like it was For real, he'd call a tune, we wouldn't know what he's saying, and he'd go like this. And we, what's that mean? Well, this was how many sharps were in the tune or how many flats were in the tune. Like, that's a key signature. It took us like a few days to figure out what he was doing. But then he'd call the tune and we might actually know the tune. And then we'd start playing and he'd stop. Oh, no, wait a sec. Stop. And with people watching and everything, he's like, don't you know the intro? And the intro? You know the intro. Oh, what intro? We don't know what, we didn't know what he was talking about. And then he'd like sing it to us and we'd figure it out. And the next night we knew the intro and that was our school. We were playing and it was a concert. Like there were probably 500 people or more in this theater. And we were playing a song, I don't remember what song it was, and he got up and he had a wireless mic and he started walking through the theater. And he got to the other end, like he's at the back of the theater, and we can't even hear him, we don't know what's going on, he's singing off, gone off on this tangent, and we're just trying to follow him. And we weren't doing a good job. And he like starts shouting at us from across the theater, stop, stop. And then he starts apologizing to the audience. Sorry, my band, you know, they're a little confused. And he started explaining to us what we should have been doing like 100 feet away in front of 700 people. But you know what, we learned the hard way.
He was the type of teacher from whom you learn and retain because he made you figure it out yourself. You know, he didn't hand it to you, he wouldn't explain it, he would make you figure it out yourself.
One of the reasons that Big stayed in Alberta is because he did not have an easy life before. And he spent most of his life, I mean, you know, we cannot in this country be self-satisfied about the way we treat minorities. But Big lived his whole life in a place and in situations in which minorities were quite badly treated. That was a very important factor to him. He thought he had come to paradise when he came here. And that's one of the things that he explained to people like Tony Poindexter when he saw him and Babs Gonzalez. They said, where are you? And he would say, man, I'm in heaven. Because he was in Alberta.
Was fortunate enough to talk to Tom not too long ago, actually. I think it was on CKUA about the environment that really was part of the Edmonton scene around 1970 that attracted Big, the club scene. And I was quite amazed about the amount of activity. And I think you put it so well. I mean, the number of clubs and the amount of work for musicians back then.
But there was an explosion of music in nightclubs in Edmonton. In exactly 1960, which is when the liquor laws changed. Right? This was dry. In this province, in a city, you couldn't go into a beer parlor with your wife. Or maybe, no, you had to go out of town to a ladies and escorts. I mean, it was totally uncivilized. In 1960, that changed. There were a number of reasons that were good for the change. The Alberta Liquor Control Board, in its wisdom, said everything is against the rules, and we'll see you later. But the opening rules were, you can't have a bar that isn't connected directly to a restaurant. And if you have a bar, it has to close at 12 o'clock, and so does the restaurant liquor service have to stop at 12 o'clock, unless you have at least a three-piece band, in which case you can serve liquor till 2 o'clock. Well, this was an incentive. And that's one of the reasons that when Big came to town, he worked in, I don't know how many clubs. There were 18 nightclubs within one block of Jasper Avenue between 100th Street and 109th Street that had at least one band, some of them had 2 or 3, working in them 6 nights a week.
This has been, I want to do this on a weekly basis with you. You know, Big was this, you know, this endless source of knowledge and information, but we have that happening here as well. And sometimes we don't think to kind of dip into that well. But what an honor this has been. What a huge honor this has been. Thank you for coming.